How did some of the most beloved names in PC industry disappear without a trace? Let's talk. Once upon a time, the PC industry was chaotic, exciting, and full of hopeful pioneers who thought their latest gadget could change the world. The brands behind these machines weren't just selling products, they were selling a vision. Faster internet, limitless creativity, and the dream of having a computer in every home on every desk. And for a while, it worked. These companies had their moment in the spotlight, plastered across TV ads, magazines, and even your aunt's living room. But, as with most things in life, nothing stays at the top forever. Tech doesn't wait for you to catch your breath, it's always moving forward, never looking back. If you were around in the 90s, there's a solid chance you either owned a Gateway computer or knew someone who did. Gateway, born in an Iowa farmhouse of all places, seemed like one of those quirky American success stories. During its heyday, Gateway wasn't just successful, it was obnoxiously successful. They raked in billions in revenue, opened many stores across the United States, and had a brand recognition score that could make HP sweat a little. The strategy was simple: sell directly to the customer and cut out the greasy middleman. Gateway computers weren't the flashiest, but they were reliable, relatively affordable, and came with dependable reps. Then came the slow, miserable slide into irrelevance, and Gateway's first big mistake was thinking the world would stay the same. Dell showed up with a business model that actually understood what the internet was. Gateway's adorable country store model was getting obsolete in an era that was rapidly getting more online. Meanwhile, Best Buy, Circuit City, and other competitors started pumping out PCs faster and cheaper. Suddenly, Gateway's direct selling model didn't feel so direct anymore. Leadership fumbled, branding felt stale, and the company slowly deflated, until eventually Gateway was acquired by Acer. They should have invested hard into e-commerce while they still had customer goodwill to buy their products. Dell wasn't doing anything magical, they just made it easier to buy a computer from your couch. Second, Gateway should have focused on what made them great, such as simplicity, friendliness, and trust. They also needed leadership that wasn't allergic to change. Being nostalgic for the old ways is fine when you're telling campfire stories, but not when you're running a technology company. The tech world has the memory of a goldfish when it comes to past glory. Customers move fast and trends move even faster. If you think a strong brand can coast forever without evolving, Gateway is here to remind you that stubbornness is fatal. Packard Bell was the king of good enough computing, selling affordable desktops to millions of homes. Born out of the ashes of a defunct radio company, Packard Bell pulled the old corporate trick of slapping a famous-sounding name on a completely different product and convinced everyone it was a trusted household brand. And somehow, it worked. At its peak, Packard Bell was a well-known chain of the PC world. Their computers weren't flashy, weren't powerful, and certainly weren't made to last, but they were everywhere. In the early to mid-90s, if you walked into an electronics store, chances are the first thing you'd see was a tower with a Packard Bell sticker slapped on the front. They understood something that a lot of early tech companies missed. That is, consumers didn't really know what the hell they were buying. Packard Bell's strategy was simple: they make computers cheap, make them available, and make sure they look like the best deals in the store. And it worked. Packard Bell eventually held close to 50% of the US PC retail space at their peak. Unfortunately, a business model built around selling products of minimum viability doesn't exactly lead to brand loyalty. Early customers were willing to tolerate a glitchy and sluggish machine. But as customers got smarter and technology advanced, these barely functional computers stopped being charming and they started being a major liability. Companies like Compaq, Dell, and HP started selling slightly better machines for roughly the same price. And they didn't need to bribe customers with free America online trials and a copy of Encarta. Instead of adapting, Packard Bell doubled down on their failing bargain bin strategy. The final nail in the coffin came when NEC, a Japanese tech giant, bought a majority stake in the company. Packard Bell had a golden opportunity, and the first thing they should have done was to pivot their focus from just being cheap to being reliable and affordable. People are perfectly willing to forgive modest specs if the thing they bought is actually reliable and doesn't fail very often. Lastly, Packard Bell should have started innovating once they had the market's attention. Instead, they seemed to assume that everyone would always want whatever inside their beige PC cases. Packard Bell's story is a masterclass business example of what happens when you confuse initial success with permanent security. They proved you can absolutely sell a ton of low-end products in a new, exciting market, but they also proved that you can't build a sustainable brand on cutting corners. As the market is maturing, consumers want value and reliability. Packard Bell also reminds us that customer perception is like wet cement. It hardens fast, and once it does, it's hell to change. Also, once people decided Packard Bell meant cheap garbage, it didn't matter how many better models they released, the damage was done. Born in 1982 by three ex-Texas Instruments engineers with more nerve than budget, Compaq did the unthinkable. It took on IBM, and they were the first company to reverse engineer IBM TICS BIOS legally and successfully, which basically gave them a golden key to complete PC compatibility. Suddenly, consumers didn't have to buy a computer from IBM to run IBM software. Fast forward a few years and Compaq was rolling in cash, and it looked like Compaq was destined to be the Coca-Cola of computing. The 80s and 90s were a glorious time for Compaq. While other clones were busy duct-taping their PCs together and hoping for the best, Compaq built solid, reliable machines that could hold their own in enterprise environments. The Compaq Portable, their first machine, was the real deal. It could run IBM software. It costs less and didn't require you to sell your soul to Big Blue. It was a hit with traveling professionals, business folks, and IT departments that were tired of the IBM tax. By the early 90s, Compaq had muscled its way into the top ranks of the PC world. They were the first company to break $1 billion in sales faster than any other. And then came the fall, which was less of a dramatic plunge and more of a protracted slide into irrelevance. The cracks started appearing when Compaq tried to be all things to all people, instead of focusing on what they were good at. That is building reliable, enterprise-grade hardware. They bought Digital Equipment Corporation in 1998 for a casual $9.6 billion. Unfortunately, integration was a mess, cultures clashed, product lines overlapped, and Compaq suddenly looked like a company that had bitten off more than it could compute. The brand started to lose focus, and competitors, most notably Dell, smelled blood in the water and swooped in with a leaner, meaner, direct-to-consumer model. Eventually, HP came along in 2002 and bought Compaq for $25 billion. Compaq didn't fail because they lacked talent, ideas, or even money. They failed because they forgot the cardinal rule of tech, that is to know what you are and don't try to be something else unless you're absolutely sure you can pull it off. Compaq should have doubled down on quality, innovation, and enterprise. They had a trusted brand and a loyal customer base. All they had to do was keep delivering what they were known for. Compaq needed to modernize its sales model, simplify its product line, and stop trying to win every market segment at once. The story of Compaq is the Silicon Valley version of a Shakespearean tragedy with brilliant beginning, flawed hero, and a tragic ending. It teaches us that success in tech isn't just about being first or biggest, it's about being focused. Compaq had a crystal-clear mission early on. They wanted to make IBM-compatible computers better, cheaper, and more accessible. And for a while, they nailed it. Somewhere along the line, they lost the direction. Now, Compaq is remembered as the company that made the PC affordable, compatible, and eventually, regrettably, forgotten. E-machines burst onto the scene in 1998 with a very specific mission. That is, to make dirt-cheap computers for people who didn't know or care what a CPU clock speed was. And to their credit, they absolutely crushed that mission. At a time when big names like Compaq and HP were still messing around with sub-$1,000 price point, E-machines swooped in with desktops that started at $399. Suddenly, E-machines was one of the fastest-growing PC brands in the US. They carved out a profitable little niche in the tech industry. No frills, no flair, just the basics at a bargain. At their peak, E-machines was selling hundreds of thousands of units annually. They were everywhere. In fact, you couldn't throw a CD-ROM without hitting an E-machines tower in a public library or a cash-strapped school lab. Now here's where the story starts to go sideways. The problem with selling cheap computers is that margins were razor thin. The performance of devices was modest, support was inconsistent, and build quality hovered somewhere between budget and don't sneeze near it. And once Dell and HP decided to play the low-cost game too, E-machines suddenly became a bottom-shelf option in the shelves that were getting crowded. The tech press wasn't exactly singing praises, while enthusiasts mocked the brand. Corporate IT departments also avoided E-machines like a contagious rash. In the meantime, E-machines tried branching out into laptops, and they ended up replicating the same mediocrity in a more fragile form factor. By the early 2000s, the company was running out of steam, innovation, and excuses. And in 2004, Gateway bought eMachines for around $266 million. There was a real opportunity for eMachines to become the IKEA of computer industry by being affordable, reliable, and weirdly endearing. They could have focused on optimizing the basics, such as simple user experience, decent build quality, upgradability, and customer support. And when price is the only reason people buy your product, it's game over when competitors offering something cheaper or better at similar pricing. eMachines shows us that in tech, being cheap will get you in the door, but it won't get you a seat at the table. You have to offer value and not just low prices. The brand also proves that scaling up quickly without a real foundation can be risky. Growth is only good if it's sustainable, and eMachines bet everything on volume without ever upgrading the actual experience. Perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that branding matters. People bought eMachines because they had to, and that's not a healthy customer relationship. When your brand becomes synonymous with bare minimum, don't be surprised when your customer base starts upgrading to literally anything else. It's better known today for selling memory chips and SSDs, but once they used to sell full-blown desktops and laptops as well. For a moment, they looked like might just do the unthinkable, that is beating Dell at its own game. But they were failed at that. To understand why Micron PC mattered, we have to rewind to the 1990s, a magical time when tech companies still put an E in front of everything. Micron Technology, the company behind Micron PC, was already a heavyweight in the semiconductor industry, especially in DRAM manufacturing. So naturally, someone in the boardroom must have thought that they should build the whole PC too. And they did. Micron PC was spun up as a PC building division, leveraging Micron's memory and storage expertise to craft computers that were actually good. But by the early 2000s, the PC market was known by its cutthroat pricing and ruthless efficiency. Dell had optimized their direct-to-consumer and B2B operations. Micron PC were still selling decent machines. Unfortunately, being decent wasn't enough when competitors were offering the same thing that are cheaper, faster, and with flashier marketing. By late 2008, Micron PC filed for bankruptcy. Micron PC had the ingredients for long-term success, such as supply chain credibility, quality control, and a stable customer base. Instead of doubling down on their well-known strengths, such as reliability, service, and integration with their own component manufacturing, Micron PC was busy with branding, rebranding, and unnecessary acquisitions. There's also the gaping black hole where marketing should have been. Apparently, starting with the idea of offering good hardware and strong internal B2B aren't enough. You need vision and unique identity. Micron PC had a solid core audience, including schools, businesses, and government institutions. But Micron PC went too broad and too bold. That's fine if you've got the resources of a Fortune 500 company. But when you're a mid-tier player, spreading thin is not a proper strategy.